Assalamu alaikum. Tradewinds Books presents Hijrah House, The Fight Against Recidivism, Volume 2. Join us as we read a chapter titled Policy Beneath the Ballcap. Mina Ware learned early that North Platte had a way of making people feel smaller than the horizon suggested. The sky stretched endlessly, but expectations were narrow. She had grown up there, left for a short while, then returned to the area with 2 children, a quiet strength and a faith she carried mostly on the inside. At 32, Mina had already spent 5 years working in corrections. The job paid the bills, kept the lights on, and gave her children stability. It also demanded a certain hardness. You learned quickly how to keep your face neutral, your voice steady, and your private life sealed away. Mina was good at that part, too good some days. The father of her children had been a Muslim from Serbia, gentle in his own way, passionate in others. Through that relationship, Mina had been introduced to Islam. What began as curiosity grew into conviction. She read, listened, asked questions, and eventually stood alone in her apartment, whispering the words that changed the direction of her life. She accepted Islam not for him, not for anyone else, but because pleasing Allah felt like truth settling into her bones. That clarity, however, also brought pain. The relationship could not continue. It was not lawful, and Mina knew that faith demanded sacrifices that were not poetic or easy. Leaving was one of them. When it ended, she was a single mother of 2, newly Muslim, and very aware that the world was not built to accommodate all 3 of those things at once. When she began working in the prison system, Mina made a decision. Her Islam would be private. She prayed quietly, fasted discreetly, and avoided conversations that might lead to questions. She did not wear a khimar at work, not because she did not believe in it, but because she was still learning how to carry her faith without it costing her her livelihood. The struggle weighed on her, especially on days when she caught her reflection in the mirror and felt she was leaving part of herself behind. Still, when the time for prayer came, Mina turned her face toward Allah wherever she could. Sometimes it was an empty office, sometimes a storage room during a long shift. She learned the rhythm of the facility well enough to find small pockets of privacy. Prayer became her anchor, the moment when the walls, the noise, the uniforms all faded, and she remembered who she was beyond her badge. It was during one of those moments that everything changed. She had just begun her prayer. The world narrowed to whispered verses and controlled breaths when the door opened. Mina froze for half a second before steadying herself. She finished quickly, her heart pounding. The officer standing there looked confused, then curious, then amused in a way that made her stomach tighten. He said nothing, then walked away. He was the kind of man who could not hold water, the kind who treated other people's private moments like entertainment. By the end of the shift, half the facility knew. Mina felt exposed in a way she never had before. Her prayers, which had been her refuge, were now something whispered about in break rooms and hallways. Fear followed quickly. She had children to feed and rent to pay. Corrections was not known for gentleness towards difference, so she braced herself for jokes, suspicions, maybe worse. For the first time since accepting Islam, She wondered if she had been naive to think she could keep the two worlds separate. The comments came as expected, some awkward, some ignorant, some surprisingly respectful. What Mina did not expect was the silence from administration. No reprimand, no warning, just work as usual. Months later, a supervisor position opened up at a women's facility. Mina had not planned on applying. Promotions brought attention and scrutiny, but her name began circulating anyway. She had a solid record, calm leadership, and a reputation for fairness. A colleague pulled her aside one afternoon and said, "You should throw your hat in the ring. They're looking at you." That night, Mina prayed istikhara. She asked Allah for the goodness of her choice, for a door to open only if it was better for her and her children, her worldly life and her afterlife. She pleaded with Allah that if this position was not good for her and her children, her worldly life and her afterlife, to remove her from the situation and to remove the desire from that situation from her heart. She felt no thunderbolt, no dramatic sign, just a quiet steadiness that told her to pursue it and leave it to Allah to allow it or forbid it from happening. The interview panel was formal, all measured questions and neutral expressions. Mina presented her experience, her approach to leadership, her understanding of safety and accountability. She spoke confidently, drawing on years of navigating difficult situations without escalating them. Then the question shifted. One panel member cleared his throat and asked about her faith. He asked if she was Muslim. A lump formed in Mina's throat. For a moment, fear threatened to undo her composure. She thought of her children, of how easily bias could be disguised as professionalism. She answered carefully, honestly, and without apology. That was when the tone changed. They explained that the facility struggled to meet the needs of Muslim female inmates. Chaplain visits were inconsistent, policies were unclear, and staff did not always know the difference between contraband and religious accommodation. They were not looking for an imam. They were looking for a lieutenant who understood both policy and faith, someone who could act as a liaison. Mina listened, stunned. They talked about kimars and how to draft guidelines that balanced safety with dignity. They spoke about religious texts, prayer rugs, dietary considerations, about Ramadan, and how meal times could be adjusted without disrupting operations. They wanted her expertise, her insight, her lived understanding. When the interview ended, Mina sat in her car and cried, not from fear this time, but from a sense of being seen in a way she had never expected. She was offered the position and accepted. Lieutenant Ware began wearing kimar beneath her ballcap, tucked neatly into her uniform collar. It was a small accommodation, but for Mina, it was transformative. It allowed her to be visible without being exposed, faithful without being unsafe. Slowly, that confidence followed her beyond the facility. She found herself wearing her kimar more often than most days, than almost everywhere. Her work changed too. Policies were drafted with care. Inmates who had felt invisible began to feel acknowledged. Confusion gave way to clarity. Mina did not preach. She did not overstep. She simply did her job with integrity, guided by faith and professionalism. At night, after her children were asleep, Mina sometimes stood at the window and looked out at the wide Nebraska sky. She thought about the path that had brought her there, the quiet prayers, the moments of fear, the unexpected opportunities. She had learned that faith did not always demand loud declarations. Sometimes it asked for patience, sometimes courage, and sometimes it unfolded beneath a ballcap, in places no one thought to look, reshaping systems, one policy at a time. We hope you enjoyed this excerpt from Hijrah House, The Fight Against Recidivism, Volume 2. If you like this story, subscribe to our channel to stay updated on the release date of Volume 2.